Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to be exploring The Artist's Way by
Hmm.
Julia Cameron.
Okay.
It's a book that I think a lot of people have heard of.
Oh, for sure. Oh,
It's been around for a while,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and it's all about unlocking your creative potential.
Yes.
So we're going to kind of take a look at
Yeah.
some of the tools and exercises that are in there,
Okay.
and really just try to distill some of the key insights that resonated with me.
Right.
And that I think could be super valuable for anyone
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
What I think is really fascinating about it is that
Yeah.
Cameron really approaches creativity not just as a skill, but as a spiritual practice.
Right.
And that's why she believes that, like, by nurturing your, artist child
Yeah.
and clearing out this mental clutter, you can actually tap into this wellspring of inspiration.
Yeah, and she has these two like core practices
Yes.
that seem so simple, but can be surprisingly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And those are morning pages
Yes.
and artists' dates.
Love it.
Have you ever tried morning pages?
Absolutely. They're a game changer for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so for people who have never heard of morning pages, what is that?
So the idea is you write 3 pages every morning, just stream of consciousness, no editing, just whatever comes out.
Wow.
And at first it might feel like you're just like dumping random thoughts onto the page.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like my first few pages were like,
Yeah.
I need coffee.
Right.
Did I feed the cat?
Exactly.
Why that guy always wearing that hat?
Yeah, totally.
Like very
Stains.
mundane. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then the idea is that as you keep doing it.
Yeah, the magic of it is that, like,
Yeah.
you start to uncover these deeper thoughts and feelings that might be blocking your creativity.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like you're clearing out this mental cobweb, and the book has so many amazing examples of people having these like breakthroughs. Like a writer who suddenly realized why they kept getting stuck on the same plot point,
Wow.
all thanks to their morning pages.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So it makes me think of all those times I get like stuck on a project and I'm like, ugh, I don't know where to go from here.
Mm-hmm.
What if I just like started writing whatever came to my mind?
Yeah.
Maybe the solution would just like appear.
Totally. It's definitely worth a try.
Yeah.
Now, the other practice,
Yeah.
artist dates, are all about nurturing that playful inner artist.
Yeah.
So it's not about producing art. It's about filling the well of inspiration.
Yeah.
So Cameron suggests doing something solo once a week that delights your inner child.
Okay, I admit when I first read about artist dates, I was like, that sounds cheesy. Sure. But then I tried it.
Yeah.
And wow.
Yeah.
I went to a botanical garden and just spent like hours sketching weird plants.
Awesome.
It was so freeing.
Love it.
Like I felt like a kid again.
Mm-hmm.
Totally absorbed in the moment.
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
Cameron says it's like taking your inner artist on this fun outing.
Right.
And, these dates can be surprisingly inspiring.
Yeah.
The book, she shares the story of this painter who was like struggling with a new piece, went to a flea market for an artist date.
Yeah.
And found this old rusty clock that sparked a whole new series of paintings.
See, that's what I love about this book.
Yeah.
It's packed with all these real life stories.
Totally.
That actually show you like how these practices can work in these unexpected ways.
Yeah.
It makes you want to like experiment and see what happens.
Definitely.
So we've been talking about all this nurturing our inner artist.
Yeah.
What happens when that creativity gets blocked?
Right.
Like we all have that experience, right?
Of course.
Where we just feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So Cameron talks a lot about negative beliefs, those inner critics
Right.
that we all have.
Exactly.
It's like we have this sensor in our head.
Yeah.
It's telling us you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Your ideas are stupid. You'll fail anyway.
Totally. Yeah.
Like, why even bother?
Mm.
Oh my gosh, yes. My sensor is a real jerk.
Yeah.
It tells me I should just stick to my day job and not even bother trying to write. It's so discouraging.
Yeah. Did you struggle with that too?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think most creative people do.
Yeah. And Cameron's point is we often don't even realize how these negative beliefs are holding us back.
Right.
We just accept them as truth.
Yeah.
But the book gives you these tools to combat these sensors.
Okay.
Like affirmations, for example.
Affirmations, I'll be honest, that always seemed a little too woo-woo for me. Like just repeating positive phrases is really going to change anything.
I was skeptical at first too.
Yeah.
But Cameron explains that affirmations are really about replacing negative self-talk with positive statements.
Yeah.
So it's like rewiring your brain to believe in yourself.
And your abilities.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
But what about the people around us
Right.
who, maybe intentionally or not,
Yeah.
just seem to like drain our creative energy?
Yeah, that's where Cameron's concept of toxic playmates
Okay.
and crazy makers comes in.
Okay.
So toxic playmates are those people who subtly undermine your creative confidence,
Uh-huh.
maybe with like backhanded compliments or by dismissing your efforts.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's like
Yeah.
those little comments like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a nice hobby.
Right.
Said in a way that makes you feel like what you're doing isn't serious or worthwhile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there are the crazy makers.
Okay.
These are the people who thrive on chaos and drama,
Yeah.
and their energy can be so incredibly draining,
Right.
pulling you away from your creative pursuits.
I think we've all encountered a crazy maker at some point in our lives.
Oh, absolutely.
They always seem to have a crisis going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like they suck all the air out of the room. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So Cameron suggests, setting boundaries with these types of people.
Right.
And maybe even distancing yourself from them if you need to.
Yeah, if you need to protect that creative energy.
Protect that creative energy.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that you have a right to create a space for yourself.
Yeah.
Where you feel safe and supported.
Absolutely.
Where your creative energy can flourish.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that means protecting yourself from people who drain that energy.
Yeah.
Even if they're close to you.
It's a tough but important lesson.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So speaking of protecting your creative energy,
Yes.
there's this other idea that Cameron explores
Okay.
that I find truly fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And that is synchronicity.
Love it.
Okay, now this is where it gets a little mystical for me.
Yeah.
But I'm open to it.
Yeah.
So synchronicity, it's the idea that when you are aligned with your creative purpose,
Mm-hmm.
the universe conspires to support you
Yes.
in unexpected ways.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of conspiring are we talking about here?
So it's not about magic spells or
Let's see.
anything like that. It's
Ah.
about recognizing those meaningful coincidences
Uh-huh.
that seem to happen when you're fully engaged in your creative work.
Okay.
So the book gives this example of this musician who had been working on a song for months,
Yeah.
feeling totally stuck,
Mm-hmm.
went for a walk in the park feeling frustrated,
Okay.
and overheard a conversation between two strangers
Yeah.
that gave him the missing piece of the song.
Wow.
Like, it's like the universe was whispering the solution to him.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Right.
But like the answers we're looking for might be right there in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
but we're just not tuned in to see them.
Exactly. And Cameron says that by cultivating a sense of openness and trust
Yeah.
in the creative process,
Yeah.
we become more receptive to these synchronicities.
So we've talked about morning pages.
Yes.
Artist dates.
Yep.
Negative beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
Toxic people.
Right.
And even synchronicity.
Yeah. It feels like we're building a toolkit for unlocking our creative potential.
It does.
Yeah.
But is there anything else we need to be aware of?
Well, one thing that Cameron addresses that really resonated with me is the fear of not being good enough. That paralyzing grip of perfectionism.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
That's me all over.
Yeah.
I get so hung up on trying to make everything perfect
Mm-hmm.
that I end up procrastinating
right.
or abandoning projects altogether.
Right. And the book really emphasizes that perfectionism is the enemy of creativity.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the messy, imperfect process,
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to make mistakes and learn from them.
It's so freeing.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like giving yourself permission to just create
Yeah.
without judgment,
Right.
to let the ideas flow without worrying about whether they're good enough.
And speaking of letting go of judgment,
Yes.
Cameron also talks about the destructive nature of jealousy,
Yes.
especially in creative fields.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others
Yeah.
and feeling inadequate.
Right. Social media is a breeding ground for creative comparison.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
I often find myself feeling envious of other writers' successes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like this voice whispers in my ear,
Yeah.
see, you'll never be that good.
Right. Ugh. So Cameron suggests this really interesting exercise called a jealousy map.
A jealousy map.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So it's about taking that feeling of jealousy and using it as fuel.
Okay.
So you write down the people you envy, you analyze why you envy them,
Uh-huh.
and then you translate that envy into concrete action steps.
Okay.
So instead of just feeling bad, you're using that energy to move yourself forward.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like turning a negative emotion
Right.
into a positive force for action.
Exactly.
It reminds me of that saying,
Ah,
don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle.
right.
And,
Everyone's on their own unique creative journey.
and that brings up another important point that Cameron makes. He
Yeah.
doesn't sugarcoat the realities of the creative life.
No.
There will be losses,
Right.
setbacks,
Yeah, 'cause it's
rejection.
not all sunshine and rainbows.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
But she encourages us to reframe those losses
Yeah.
as opportunities for growth.
Mm-hmm.
And she shares examples of successful artists who faced major setbacks, but ultimately persevered,
Yes.
and often finding even greater success because of the lessons they learned from
Absolutely.
their failures.
Yeah, it's like that quote, our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about developing resilience,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that setbacks are a natural part of the creative process.
Right.
And this brings us to a myth that Cameron tackles head on,
Yeah.
the idea that age limits creative potential.
Oh, for sure.
She argues that it's never too late to start creating,
Right.
and she shares all these stories of artists who achieve success later in life.
It's so inspiring to see those examples.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a reminder that our creative potential doesn't expire, right? It's like,
Right.
okay, maybe I didn't start writing my novel at 20,
Yeah.
but who cares? I can start now.
Exactly.
And that's what's so empowering about the artist's way.
Yeah.
It gives you permission to embrace your creative dreams, regardless of your age, your background, or your perceived limitations.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm already feeling inspired.
Good.
But what about those times
Yeah.
when we're committed to our creative work, yet we still get in our own way?
Right. Cameron calls this phenomenon creative U-turns.
Creative U-turns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are the moments when we self-sabotage,
Yeah.
often right before a breakthrough. It's
Yeah.
like we get scared of success or the changes it might bring.
Oh, I've totally been there.
Yeah.
Like when I'm close to finishing a big project and suddenly I find a million other things to do.
Right.
Like cleaning my entire apartment.
Yeah.
Or organizing my sock drawer.
Exactly. It's like this subconscious resistance
Yeah.
to stepping into our full creative potential.
So how do we combat these creative U-turns?
Yeah.
Do we just have to like power through them?
Well, Cameron suggests various strategies, but I think the most important one is simply becoming aware of these patterns.
Uh-huh.
So once you recognize that you tend to self-sabotage in certain ways,
Yeah.
you can start to develop strategies to interrupt those patterns.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, inner critic, I see what you're doing here.
Right.
Nice try, but I'm not falling for it this time.
Exactly. It's about becoming the boss of your own creative process.
Now, you mentioned that Cameron doesn't sugarcoat the realities of the creative life.
No.
And one of those realities for many artists
Yes.
is experiencing creative droughts.
Right.
Those periods when inspiration feels absent and the well seems to run dry.
Yep.
How does she suggest we navigate those times?
Well, first of all, she offers reassurance that creative droughts are normal.
Okay.
It's like the ebb and flow of the tide.
Yeah.
You can't expect to be riding a wave of inspiration all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's reassuring. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who struggles with this.
Trust me, you're not alone.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Cameron's advice is to keep showing up for your creative practice, even when you don't feel inspired.
Yeah.
It's about trusting that the inspiration will return,
Okay.
and that sometimes the simple act of showing up is enough to get those creative juices flowing again.
That makes me think of those days when I really don't feel like writing,
Yeah.
but I force myself to sit down at my desk and just start typing.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Wow.
More often than not,
Yeah.
something emerges.
Right.
It might not be my best work, but at least I'm moving forward.
Exactly. It's about building that momentum,
Yeah.
creating that habit of creativity.
And this brings us to another crucial aspect of the creative life
Yes.
that Cameron emphasizes, community.
Right.
She talks about the importance of surrounding ourselves with supportive people who encourage and inspire us. Right. She introduces this concept of a believing mirror.
A believing mirror.
Yeah.
What's that?
So it's like a friend or a mentor
Okay.
who reflects back positive beliefs about your creative abilities.
Okay.
It's someone who sees your potential even when you doubt yourself.
That's so important.
Yeah. We all need those people in our lives who champion our creative dreams.
And Cameron also encourages artists to form what she calls creative clusters.
Yes.
These groups of like-minded individuals who support and inspire each other.
It's about creating that sense of belonging A
Yeah.
space where we can share our work, receive feedback,
Right.
and feel like we're part of something larger than ourselves.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about morning pages,
Yes.
artist dates,
Mm-hmm.
negative beliefs, affirmations,
Right.
toxic playmates, crazy makers,
Yeah.
synchronicity, perfectionism, jealousy, creative U-turns, droughts,
Mm-hmm.
and even the power of community.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is a lot to unpack.
But I think we've just scratched the surface of what the artist's way has to offer.
I think so too.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore.
There is.
So stay tuned for part 2
Absolutely.
of our deep dive into the artist's way,
Can't wait.
where we'll delve into some of Cameron's more spiritual insights,
Okay.
explore the concept of creative recovery,
Yeah.
and discuss some practical tips for creating a fulfilling artistic life.
Awesome.
So join us for part 2.
Welcome back.
All right, so as promised,
Yes.
we're diving deeper into some of the spiritual and practical aspects of the artist's way.
Okay.
One thing that struck me
Mm-hmm.
as we were prepping for this deep dive was how often Cameron refers to God or higher power.
Right?
And, you know, I remember when I was first reading the book,
Yeah.
that kind of threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, I get that.
It felt a little preachy at first, like, is this a self-help book or
Right.
a religious text?
Yeah.
But as I kept reading, I realized that she's not really pushing a specific religion.
Yeah, she's not dogmatic at all.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more about recognizing
Mm-hmm.
that creativity connects us to something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
A source of inspiration and guidance.
Right. She calls it the great creator.
Okay, that makes more
Yeah.
sense. So it's like tapping into that universal wellspring of creativity, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it.
Right, exactly.
So how does this great creator idea tie into the practical stuff
Mm-hmm.
about becoming a better artist?
Well, remember when we were talking about synchronicity?
Yeah.
Cameron believes that those meaningful coincidences happen more often
Okay.
when you're in tune with this creative force.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like you're open
Uh-huh.
to receiving guidance and inspiration.
Okay, so that makes me think of all those times
Mm-hmm.
I've been struggling with a problem,
Uh-huh.
and then I go for a walk or listen to music.
Yeah.
And boom, the solution just pops into my head.
Right.
It's like it came from somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Cameron says that by acknowledging this connection to something larger,
Yeah.
you're more likely to experience those aha moments.
Okay.
You start to trust that you're supported on your creative journey.
So it's not just about doing the work. It's about being open to receiving help
Yes.
and guidance
Yeah.
from, well, wherever it comes from.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, actually.
Right.
Makes you feel less alone in the creative process.
Less alone. Exactly.
Speaking of feeling alone,
Yes.
Cameron talks about these shadow artists.
Yes.
And these are people who are drawn to creative fields,
Right.
but haven't fully embraced their potential.
Right. Maybe they're afraid
Yeah.
or they've internalized this idea that art isn't a real job.
Oh, I know so many people like that.
Right.
They'll say things like, oh, I wish I could paint, but I'm just not talented.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll keep their creative work hidden because they're afraid of what people will think.
Yeah. Cameron's message is we all have that shadow artist within us.
Yeah.
It's that part of you that yearns to create. Right.
Even if you're scared or you haven't found the right outlet yet.
I love that image.
Yeah.
It's like there's this hidden creative self just
Mhm.
waiting to be unleashed.
Exactly. And she talks about recovering a sense of creative entitlement.
The creative entitlement.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's this belief that you have the right to create, to
Okay.
express yourself, and to share your gifts regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is.
It's like giving yourself permission to be an artist
Yes.
without needing anyone else's approval.
Exactly.
And this idea of creative entitlement is especially important for people who've experienced what she calls creative wounds.
Mhm.
Creative wounds. What does she mean by that?
So, think about those times when you were discouraged from pursuing your creative dreams.
Yeah.
Maybe by a teacher, a parent, or even a friend.
Right.
Those experiences can leave these scars
Yeah.
that make you doubt yourself and your abilities.
You're right.
She calls it a loss of the artist child. Oh, wow. I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I remember in high school,
Yeah.
I wrote this poem that I was really proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed it to a friend. And she just laughed and said it was cheesy.
Ooh.
And it totally crushed me.
Right.
And I stopped writing poetry for years.
That's exactly the kind of experience that Cameron is talking about.
Wow.
These wounds can make you afraid to create, afraid to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
So what's the antidote?
Right.
How do you heal from those creative wounds?
Yeah. How do you get past that?
So Cameron talks about this process of creative recovery,
Okay.
and it's about recognizing those past hurts,
Yeah.
forgiving yourself and those who might have hurt you,
Hmm.
and reclaiming your creative power.
Okay.
So she suggests things like journaling affirmations
Mm-hmm.
and even therapy
Right.
to help you work through those old wounds.
So it's like you have to address those old wounds
Yeah,
before you can fully embrace your creative
you
potential.
have to clear the pathway.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then once you've started to heal those wounds,
Yeah.
then you can focus on creating a supportive environment for your creative work.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
Yeah.
Does that mean I need to go out and rent a fancy studio?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It can be as simple as designating a space in your home for your creative work,
Uh-huh.
even if it's just a corner of your desk.
Yeah.
The important thing is to create a space that feels inspiring, conducive to creative flow.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's about creating a physical space that signals to yourself,
Mm.
okay, this is where the magic happens.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also about creating boundaries
Okay.
to protect your creative time and energy.
So you mean like saying no to commitments that drain your creative energy?
Yes.
Okay.
And also things like limiting distractions, setting aside specific times for creative work,
Yeah.
and communicating your needs to the people in your life.
That's so important.
Yeah.
It's so easy to let other people's priorities take over.
Right.
And then your creative work ends up getting pushed to the side.
And that's where a lot of artists get stuck.
Yeah.
You know, they feel like they don't have time for their art,
Right.
but it's often just a matter of priorities
Yeah.
and boundaries.
Okay, we've talked about space and
Yeah.
boundaries,
Mhm.
but let's be real. A lot of artists struggle with the financial aspect
Sure.
of a creative career.
Yeah.
So how does Cameron address that?
Well, she has this really interesting perspective on money.
Okay.
She argues that our beliefs about money
Mm-hmm.
can actually block our creative flow.
Interesting.
So if you believe that money is scarce or that you're not worthy of abundance,
Okay.
those beliefs can manifest in your creative life.
So like if you're afraid of success,
Yeah,
you might subconsciously sabotage your efforts.
exactly. So she encourages you to examine your beliefs about money
Mm-hmm.
and to identify any limiting beliefs that might be holding you back.
Okay, so how do you shift those beliefs? Is it just about repeating affirmations like, I am a wealthy and successful artist?
Well, affirmations can be helpful,
Okay.
but Cameron also suggests digging deeper,
Uh-huh.
you know, exploring where those beliefs came from.
Yeah.
So she encourages things like journaling, visualizations,
Right.
and even working with a therapist to help you kind of unpack those financial blocks.
That makes it, it's like if you have these really deeply ingrained beliefs about money,
Yeah.
it's going to take more than just positive self-talk
More than just surface level stuff.
to shift them.
Yeah, you have to get down to the root of it.
And this is where the concept of synchronicity comes back into play.
Yes, it does.
So she's arguing that when you align yourself with your creative purpose
Yeah.
and you take action towards your goals,
Mm-hmm.
the universe often provides support
Yes,
in unexpected ways, including financial support.
absolutely.
Okay, so it's not just about working hard. It's also about trusting that the resources you need will show up.
You got it.
That's a really empowering perspective.
It is.
It takes some of the pressure off,
Yeah,
knowing that you don't have to do everything on your own.
for sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of support, Cameron also talks about the importance of creative generosity.
Creative generosity.
Yeah, so it's not about giving away your work for free.
Okay.
It's about sharing your gifts with the world
Okay.
and contributing to something larger than yourself.
So like teaching, mentoring,
Yes.
collaborating with others.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even just sharing your work in a way that inspires or uplifts others.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like recognizing that creativity is a gift
Hmm.
that's meant to be shared, not hoarded.
Exactly. And Cameron argues that when you practice creative generosity, you often receive even greater inspiration, support, and abundance in return.
Oh.
It's like you're putting this good creative energy out into the world,
Yeah.
and it comes back to you tenfold.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory,
Yeah.
but I think we need to address the elephant in the room,
Okay, what's that?
that inner critic. That tells us we're not good enough. Our ideas are stupid,
Yeah.
that we should just give up.
The dreaded inner critic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cameron has a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
She actually encourages us to befriend our inner critic.
Befriend it.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I know it sounds counterintuitive.
It feels more like an enemy I need to defeat.
Right, I know, but she explains that the inner critic
Yeah.
is often a part of us that's trying to protect us.
Okay.
Even if it's doing it in a really unhelpful way,
Yeah.
it's trying to keep us safe from rejection
Mm.
or failure.
Okay, I can kind of see that.
Yeah,
Like it's coming from a place of fear, not malice.
exactly.
Okay.
So instead of trying to fight it, she suggests acknowledging its presence,
Okay.
maybe even giving it a name,
Okay.
and then you can start to have a dialogue with it.
Interesting.
You know, you can thank it for its concern,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately choose not to let its fears control you.
Okay. So it's like instead of letting it just run rampant in your head, you're bringing it out into the open
Yeah,
and taking charge of the conversation.
you got it.
And speaking of taking charge, let's talk about procrastination.
Oh, yes.
We've all been there.
The universal struggle.
Right. We have a great idea,
Yeah.
but we find a million ways to avoid actually doing the work.
We are masters of distraction.
Oh, I am a master procrastinator.
Yeah,
My apartment has never been cleaner
right.
than when I'm supposed to be writing.
Exactly.
So Cameron argues that procrastination is often a symptom of fear.
Yeah.
Fear of failures, fear of success,
Mhm.
or even just the vulnerability of putting your work out into the world.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's like deep
Right.
down,
Mhm.
we're afraid of what might happen if we actually succeed.
Yeah. What if it changes things?
Yeah.
Right?
So we subconsciously find ways to avoid finishing the project.
Totally. And she suggests various strategies for
Okay.
overcoming procrastination,
Okay.
like breaking down large tasks into smaller steps,
Yeah.
setting deadlines, and finding an accountability partner.
I like the accountability partner idea.
Yeah.
It's like having someone to cheer you on and
Yeah.
to keep you honest.
To keep you on track.
Yeah.
Right. And Cameron also emphasizes the importance of understanding your personal procrastination patterns.
Mm.
So what are the triggers that make you procrastinate?
Okay.
What are the underlying fears or beliefs that are driving that behavior?
Right.
So once you understand those patterns,
Yeah.
you can start to develop specific strategies to address them.
That's so helpful.
It is.
Yeah. It's like once you know your enemy,
Mm-hmm.
you can start to develop a battle plan.
Exactly.
And speaking of battling fear, let's talk about feedback.
Ooh, yeah.
Receiving feedback can be really challenging for artists,
It can.
especially when it comes to something you've poured your heart and soul into.
Yeah, it can feel so personal.
Oh, yeah.
Like someone's criticizing a part of you.
Yeah, exactly.
So Cameron offers some wise advice
Okay.
for navigating feedback. First, it's important to seek feedback from trusted sources,
Okay.
people who understand your work
Yeah.
and whose opinions you value.
Right. There's no point in taking feedback from someone who's not your target audience or
Exactly.
who's just going to tear you down.
Right.
Yeah.
And she also encourages you to be open to different perspectives.
Okay.
Even if they're not what you want to hear, you can learn a lot from constructive criticism,
Yeah.
even if it stings a little bit.
I guess it's about remembering that feedback is a tool for growth,
Yes.
not a personal attack.
Exactly. And she also reminds us that not all feedback is created equal.
Right.
You know, you get to choose whose opinions you value
Uh-huh.
and to discern between helpful suggestions
Right.
and unhelpful negativity.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of practical stuff.
We have.
Creating space, setting boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with money, managing the inner critic,
Yep.
overcoming procrastination,
Uh-huh.
navigating feedback.
Great.
But what about the bigger picture?
Yeah.
What does it actually mean to live an artist's way of life?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So Cameron talks about it being more than just a career choice.
Mhm.
It's a way of being in the world.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity,
Yeah.
playfulness, and wonder in all aspects of your life.
So it's like bringing that creative spirit
Yes.
to everything you do,
Everything you do.
not just your art.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about finding beauty and inspiration
Mm-hmm.
in the everyday moments.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like seeing the world through an artist's eyes.
Yes.
Finding those little details
Mhm.
that other people might miss.
Exactly. And it's also about prioritizing your creative needs,
Yeah.
making time for your art,
Right.
and honoring your creative calling.
It's like giving yourself permission to live a life
Mm-hmm.
that's aligned with your creative values
Oh, yes.
and passions.
Your passions, exactly. And Cameron talks about cultivating creative gratitude.
Creative gratitude.
Yes, appreciating the gift of creativity
Yep.
and the opportunities that you have to express it.
That's a great reminder.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in the hustle
Right.
and just forget to appreciate the simple joy of creating.
And Cameron argues that gratitude can actually enhance your creativity,
Wow.
attract greater abundance, and deepen your connection to that creative force.
Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Yeah.
A lot of Cameron's ideas are interconnected.
They are all woven together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a holistic approach to creativity.
Exactly. And speaking of interconnectedness,
Yes.
she talks a lot about reconnecting with your inner child,
Yeah.
that playful, curious part of yourself
Right.
that might have gotten lost along the way.
That might have gotten buried under the weight of responsibility.
Oh, I love that idea.
Yeah.
I think we all have that inner child within us,
I think so too.
that part that loves to play,
Mm-hmm.
to explore, to see the world with a sense of wonder.
Exactly. And Cameron says that reconnecting with your inner child can unlock a wellspring of creativity and inspiration. It's like remembering that sense of joy and freedom that we had as kids.
Yes.
You know, when we weren't afraid to experiment and make a mess.
When we weren't afraid to be messy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And artist dates are a great way to nurture your inner child.
Right.
It's about giving yourself permission to be silly, to have fun,
Yeah.
and to explore the world with a sense of childlike wonder.
I'm starting to get why artist dates are so important.
Yeah.
It's not just about filling the well of inspiration. It's also about reconnecting with that playful, joyful part of ourselves.
It's about bringing back that joy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important concept,
Okay.
creating a creative sanctuary.
A creative sanctuary.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So it can be a physical space,
Okay.
like a studio or a writing desk,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also be a mental
Yeah.
or emotional space,
Okay.
a place where you feel safe to express yourself,
Okay.
to explore your creative impulses, and to nurture your artistic soul.
I love that idea.
Yeah. It's like creating a safe haven for your creativity,
Mm-hmm.
a place where you can be yourself
Yes.
without judgment or expectations.
Exactly. And Cameron encourages you to create rituals and practices that help you to enter this creative sanctuary and to connect with your creative flow.
So it's not just about having a dedicated space.
Right.
It's also about creating a mindset,
Yes.
a ritual
Mm-hmm.
that signals to yourself, okay, it's time to create.
Exactly. And speaking of creative flow,
Yeah,
we all know that sometimes that flow gets blocked,
it does.
right? We experience those dreaded creative droughts.
Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah.
It's like you've hit a wall
Mm-hmm.
and you can't seem to get any ideas or inspiration.
So Cameron offers reassurance that creative blocks are normal.
Okay,
They're not a sign of failure
right.
or inadequacy.
Okay.
It's like the ebb and flow of the tide.
Mm-hmm.
There will be times when your creative energy is high,
Yeah.
and there will be times when you need to rest, recharge, and allow inspiration to return.
Okay, that's good to know.
It is.
Sometimes I feel like I freak out
Yeah.
when I hit a creative block,
Sure.
but maybe it's just a sign that you need to take a break
Yeah.
and let your subconscious mind do its thing.
Exactly. And Cameron suggests various strategies
Yeah.
for working through creative blocks,
Okay.
such as engaging in different creative activities, taking breaks, spending time in nature,
Yeah.
or simply allowing yourself to be bored.
Bored.
Yeah,
Really? That seems counterintuitive.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But she argues that sometimes boredom can be a catalyst for creativity.
Okay.
It allows your mind to wander, to make new connections, to stumble upon these unexpected ideas.
Interesting.
It's like giving your subconscious mind some space to breathe and to do its magic.
Okay. I'm willing to give it a try.
Yeah.
Boredom as a creative tool, who knew?
Right.
Yeah. And she also encourages you to trust the process,
Yes.
to believe that inspiration will eventually return, and to focus on nurturing your creative self, even when you're not feeling particularly inspired.
It's about showing up for yourself.
So it's not just about the output.
Yeah.
It's about the ongoing process of nurturing your creativity.
It's about the journey.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a theme that runs throughout The Artist's Way.
Yeah.
You know, it's about creating a life that supports and nourishes
Yeah.
your creative spirit.
This is also inspiring.
Good.
But I have to admit, there's one concept
Okay.
that still kind of throws me off.
Yeah.
And that's the artist's date with God.
Right.
Now, that sounds a little intimidating.
I know, right?
Like, am I supposed to be having a theological debate
Yeah.
with the Almighty?
I know it sounds a bit intense,
Yeah.
but remember, Cameron's not pushing a specific religion here.
Okay.
You know, she's using God as a metaphor for that deeper source of creativity and wisdom that we can all tap into.
So it's not about a literal date.
No.
It's more about creating a space for reflection and connection to your inner wisdom.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about setting aside time to listen to your intuition,
Okay.
to ask for guidance,
Yeah.
and to receive inspiration.
So she suggests things like spending time in nature,
Oh, yeah.
meditating, journaling,
Yeah.
or simply sitting in silence
Hmm.
and listening to the whispers of your soul.
Exactly.
That sounds really peaceful, actually.
It does.
It's like a way to kind of get out of your head
Uh-huh.
and tap into something deeper.
And that brings us to another important concept, creative faith.
Creative faith.
Yeah.
What's that?
So it's the belief that you have something unique and valuable to offer the world,
Okay.
and that your creative expression matters.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about believing in yourself and your creative vision,
Mm-hmm.
even when doubts creep in.
Even when those doubts creep in, exactly. And Cameron argues that creative faith is essential
Okay.
for overcoming fear, self-doubt,
Yeah.
and those pesky inner critics that we talked about earlier.
It's like saying, okay, inner critic, I hear you, but I'm choosing to believe in myself and my ability to create something meaningful.
You got it.
And that brings us to another concept that ties into this idea of faith, creative synchronicity.
Yes.
Remember those meaningful coincidences we were talking about?
Yeah, there's synchronicities.
Right.
Right.
So Cameron argues that when you're aligned with your creative purpose
Yes.
and you're taking action towards your goals,
Mm-hmm.
you're more likely to experience those synchronicities.
Putting yourself in the flow.
Right. It's like the universe is conspiring to support you,
Yes.
opening doors and presenting opportunities
Yeah.
in these unexpected ways.
In these mysterious ways.
Yeah,
Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
It makes the creative journey feel less like a solo mission and more like a collaborative adventure
Right.
with the universe.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about all these empowering concepts,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we need to address one of the biggest fears
Okay.
that many artists face,
What's that?
sharing their work.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah.
It can feel so vulnerable to put your creations out into the world,
Right.
to expose them to potential judgment and criticism.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Cameron acknowledges that fear,
Okay.
but she argues that sharing your work is an essential part of the creative process.
Yeah.
It's about completing the cycle of creation,
Uh-huh.
allowing your work to touch others,
Right.
and contributing to the larger creative conversation.
Yeah, I guess if you're just creating in a vacuum only for yourself,
Yeah,
you're missing out on that potential for connection and impact.
you're missing out on that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Exactly. And she encourages you to reframe sharing your work
Yeah.
as an act of generosity and courage.
Yeah.
It's about giving yourself permission to be seen,
Yeah.
to connect with others through your art,
Mhm.
and to make a difference in the world.
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
It is.
Yeah, it's not just about self-expression.
Right.
It's about contributing to something larger than yourself.
Exactly. And Cameron offers various tips.
For sharing your work in a way that feels authentic
Yeah.
and aligned with your values.
Okay.
So this might involve seeking feedback from trusted sources,
Right.
starting small by sharing with close friends or family, or
Mhm.
finding communities or platforms
Yeah.
that resonate with your work.
It's about finding your audience,
Yes.
the people who will appreciate and connect with your unique creative vision.
Finding your people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And she also reminds us that not everyone will appreciate or understand your work.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's about finding your tribe, the people who get you,
Mm-hmm.
and trusting that your work will find its way to the people who need it most.
Okay, so we've covered so much ground
We have.
in this deep dive.
Yes.
But if we were to sum up the artist's way in a few sentences,
Yeah.
what would you say are the key takeaways?
I think it's about recognizing that creativity is a spiritual practice,
Mm-hmm.
a journey of self-discovery,
Yeah.
and a gift that we are meant to share with the world. And it's about giving ourselves permission to be creative, to nurture our inner artist,
Yes.
and to create a life that supports and nourishes our creative spirit.
Exactly. And it's about trusting the process,
Yeah.
embracing imperfection, and believing in the power of our own unique creative voice.
So what do you think? Are you ready to unlock your creative potential?
I am. Let's dive into the final part of this deep dive
Okay.
and see what other gems we can uncover.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the artist's way.
It's been quite a journey.
Yeah. You know, as we've been talking about all these tools and concepts,
Right.
I've been thinking about like what it really means to live a creative life.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than just producing art. right?
Absolutely.
Like, what does it actually look like
Okay.
to embody that creative spirit?
You're right.
Yeah.
Cameron talks about the artist's way of life, and
Yeah.
it's something that's woven through the entire book.
Good.
And it's about recognizing that creativity isn't just something you do, it's a way of being in the world.
It makes me think of those people who just seem to like find inspiration everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they just approach everything with this sense of curiosity and playfulness.
Yes.
Like they see the world through a different lens.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Cameron talks about cultivating the artist's way of seeing,
Okay.
which is all about noticing the beauty and wonder in those everyday moments. It's like training yourself to look for the extraordinary in the ordinary.
So instead of just like rushing through my day on autopilot,
Yeah.
I should be paying more attention to the details, the little things that spark my curiosity.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about engaging your senses, being present in the moment,
Yeah.
and approaching the world with the beginner's mind.
Okay.
You know, she suggests activities like taking nature walks, visiting museums, or even just trying new foods.
Yeah.
It's about exposing yourself to new experiences and allowing yourself to be surprised and delighted
Okay.
by the world around you.
So I love that it's like making a conscious effort
Yeah.
to see the world through fresh eyes,
Yes.
like an artist looking for inspiration.
Totally.
Now that makes me think about another challenge
Mm-hmm.
that I think a lot of creative people face.
Yeah.
And that is creative blocks.
Right?
Those times when like the inspiration just seems to dry up.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah. And I remember Cameron talking about this.
Yeah.
She reassures us that creative blocks are normal.
Yeah.
It's like the ebb and flow of the tide.
Right. You can't expect to be riding that wave of inspiration all the time.
But what do you do when you're stuck in that ebb phase?
Right.
Do you just wait for the tide to turn?
Well, remember her advice about showing up for your creative practice even when you don't feel inspired?
Yeah.
That's still important.
Okay.
But she also suggests embracing what she calls creative play.
Creative play. Okay. What's that?
It's about experimenting, trying new things,
Uh-huh.
and approaching your work with a sense of lightness and joy.
Okay.
It's like giving yourself permission to be a kid again, to make a mess, to have fun without worrying about the outcome.
That sounds so freeing.
It is.
Yeah. I think sometimes I take my creative work way too seriously.
It's easy to do that,
Yeah.
to get caught up in that pressure to produce something good or successful.
Right. And I forget that like it's actually supposed to be enjoyable.
Right. Exactly.
So, you know, Cameron reminds us that the creative process itself
Yes.
should be nourishing and fulfilling,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't always lead to a masterpiece.
Yeah, you don't always have to have a finished product,
Right.
as long as you're enjoying the process.
So that brings me to something I've been kind of wondering about as we've been talking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Cameron talks a lot about tapping into our intuition,
Yes.
listening to that inner voice that guides us.
Yes.
But how do you know if it's really your intuition speaking
That's a great question.
or just like your inner critic
Yeah.
disguised as your intuition?
And it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And Cameron acknowledges that the inner critic can be sneaky,
Right.
trying to masquerade as intuition to keep you safe and small.
So how do you tell the difference?
Well, she says that true intuition often feels expansive and exciting.
Okay.
Like it's opening you up to new possibilities. You know,
Yeah.
it might feel a little scary,
Mhm.
but it's a good kind of scary, like stepping outside your comfort zone and into your potential.
Right.
You know, the inner critic usually feels more contractive
Yeah.
and fear-based.
Yeah.
It's trying to keep you stuck in your comfort zone,
Right.
even if that zone is no longer serving you.
Okay, so it's like intuition is whispering, go for it.
Yes.
Take the risk,
Yeah.
see what happens.
It's that leap.
And the inner critic is saying, nope, too scary.
Stay here.
Stay right here where it's safe.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, and Cameron suggests practices like meditation, journaling, and spending time in nature
Yeah.
to help you strengthen your intuition and discern it
Yeah.
from the voice of your inner critic.
It's like tuning your inner compass,
Yes.
learning to trust that inner voice
That inner wisdom.
that knows what's best for you.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've talked about so many powerful tools and insights
We have.
in this deep dive.
Yeah, it's been an amazing exploration.
It has.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the artist's way,
Mm-hmm.
what final thoughts would you leave our listeners with?
I think the most important message of the artist's way
Yeah.
is that we are all creative beings and that creativity is a gift
Yeah.
that is meant to be nurtured and shared with the world.
It's about recognizing that creative expression isn't just for artists writers, and musicians.
No.
It's for everyone.
It's for everyone.
And Cameron reminds us that creativity is a journey, not a destination.
Yes. It's about the process.
Yeah.
Trusting our intuition and believing in the power of our own unique creative voice.
So if you're feeling inspired to tap into your own creative potential, I encourage you to pick up a copy of The Artist's Way.
Yes.
And just start exploring.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Yeah, you never know what you'll find.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
There's a whole community of creative souls out there ready to support and encourage you along the way.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into The Artist's Way.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep creating and keep diving deep.